Welcome, everyone, to Samaritan's Well podcast, a Soul Sense podcast. And we have Leah Chrest with us today. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
So glad that you're here. She's an author, a mom, a wife, a teacher of Christian meditation. She actually teaches math also at her local high school, and she comes from Maryland. What part of Maryland is it? It's not too far from, it's between Baltimore and D.C., I think you said.
Exactly. It's Columbia, Maryland, right smack in the middle.
Got it. And you grew up in that area?
Yeah, I grew up a little bit north of that. So
a little bit north.
I've called Maryland home my whole life.
Well, so glad to have you here. I know you've written a couple books. You're working on a third real important one. Tell us a little about your story and what brings you here today.
Thank you, Mark. So my story begins, probably 8 or 9 years ago. My kids were little. My first husband, we had a wonderful marriage, but however, he was a functional alcoholic.
Okay.
And that made certain aspects of marriage difficult for understandable reasons. I was struggling with my mental health and went to meditation to help me to connect with God. I look at meditation as, we talk to God all the time. Mm-hmm. How often do we listen? And I needed to listen. I needed to hear and be comforted and begin to shift my identity and hope from the approval of others because I wasn't getting it. It's the typical disease of alcoholism causes a lot of poor me syndrome and blaming the world. And my husband, that's not who he was when we started. It's not who he was when he passed, but it is who he was in the interim. Yeah. And it was tough. It was really tough. And I needed to find my worth in God. And meditation led me to a place where my outside world had not changed, but my inner world did. And it was noticeable to the point that my children started saying, "Mom, nothing ever bothers you. What's your secret?"
Whoa.
And it was
when your kids are asking you, it's something.
And even my husband, anytime I get a little off, he just hand me my meditation pillow and say, "Go." Wow. You know what you need.
And he figured it out too.
He did. And he started towards the end. He meditated as well with me when he was in his recovery. So that's how it all started. I began teaching Christian meditation on YouTube. I now teach also with the Christian Meditation Center based out of New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I teach online meditation through both places and then in person at my local church as well. My story continues. I wrote my first book. I was fascinated by, I forget the name of the author off the top of my head, but it was called Jeffrey Long, God in the Afterlife.
Okay.
I read that book and was just fascinated. I dove in, read probably 500 near-death experiences. And then I took those and wrote a book. It was a narrative nonfiction where you kind of walk through and see from like a fictional perspective what it would be like to have the ultimate near-death experience from the Christian lens. And that was just a wild ride to write that. And then my husband passed away from liver cirrhosis the day after I published that book.
Wow, the day after.
It was crazy. So glad that he made a point. He made me publish it. I think he knew he was going to pass. Wow. He had a few months sobriety at that point. But I think we don't know 100% what happened. Collapsed lungs, maybe it was a heart issue. I don't know. But he passed away peacefully at home that next morning. And that started me on a journey of grief recovery that with a few months after he passed, I started writing It's Okay to Be Okay. And the foundation of that is that first day or two, multiple people came up to me and said, "You're just going to need to survive this next year." And that wasn't acceptable to me. God is a God who wants us to thrive. Right. That doesn't mean we're not going to have pain. Doesn't mean we're going to have an easy road. But he's overcome the world, and he's going to give us the ability to have peace.
He said, "Be of good cheer," right? I've overcome.
Yes, I've overcome the world, and I want your joy to be complete, and I want you to have the peace that passes understanding. And say, okay, I know I'm going to have tough times, but I don't want to just survive. That's not for me.
Yeah.
So I realized pretty quickly that my journey was very different than most people who were grieving that I knew and had talked to. And the grief literature I was getting from my church that they were giving me, which was wonderful that they did that for me. But my
Sure.
children even laughed. They would read it and laugh and say, "How is this helping people? I don't
Right.
understand."
Right. It
I said,
didn't make
"Mom, you got
sense
to
to
write a
them.
book on this." And so I
Right.
did. And it's called "It's Okay to Be Okay," and it's about
Hmm.
the pathway to a better relationship and deeper relationship with God, moving through grief. And that was a
Hmm.
long intro, but my story's long and complex. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell.
That's a great intro. And since you threw out that intro, which is great, I'll tell you my favorite simple anecdote about meditation and prayer. And it's a story back in the day. Mother Teresa was being interviewed by one of these, I think it was 60 Minutes, but it may have been something else. And I didn't actually see it, I just saw it written about that. They asked her this question. They said, well, Mother Teresa, we know that you pray a lot and you talk to God. Um, what does God say to you when you talk to him? And she looks a little quizzically and goes, oh, he doesn't say anything. He just listens.
Hmm.
And then they stop for a minute, the interviewer, and oh, then what do you say to God when when you pray? And then she looks real quizzical and goes, oh, I don't say anything. I just listen. And I've always loved that story because stopping to listen is such a part of that meditation and that connection with God, isn't it?
I think you're really onto something there. I mean, if you think about being with someone you adore, you love,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to say anything.
Mm,
You can just be with each other and look in each other's eyes, and just that is the greatest moment when you can do that and just stare in someone's eyes and be present with them
that's right.
and not say anything. And
And
that's
you,
what
you
meditation
don't even
is
have to fill it with words. It's
no,
like that great message from St. Francis, I
it
think.
was.
He said, "Go and preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words."
Right.
And I think there's a lot to that. But tell us about how meditation and your connection with God helped you to have a different kind of grieving in that time of the tragedy right after. I mean, your husband, he wasn't that old.
Yeah, he was 40. Yeah, 40, almost a couple of days away from 41 when he passed.
Wow.
So,
So tell us about how that, the day after you publish that first book and he dies peacefully at home, you've got your two young children. Tell us about those first few weeks and months. We know that you didn't, the literature you got was well meaning, but it didn't necessarily help you much. What did help you? How did that go in those next few weeks and months, Leah?
well, this will be a long monologue, so I'm going to have you jump in whenever you want, okay?
Sure.
Because I could talk for a half hour to just
You're
outline
fine.
everything. Um, so I'm going to start with the foundation because I think if we don't have that, like you said, that foundation of faith and
Y-
trust,
yes.
there's no journey forward. It's you
Yes.
just get stuck. And so for
Yes.
me, I had built up, like you were talking about, that relationship of listening and
Mm-hmm.
God listening to me and me listening to him and just bathing in that love. And that was a thing that, I mean, at first, that first day, of course, it was very difficult.
Oh,
But
yes.
shortly thereafter, I was able to get back to that and just be in the presence of God. I trusted God with everything I had. And I knew that he wanted what was best for me, my children, my husband's parents, my husband. I knew he had us all in the palm of his hand. And
Mm,
I trusted that. I didn't understand it. I mean, how can you, right? But I
right.
trusted. And so that is first. And I forgave God. So whatever it was, if I was angry with God, it was immediate. Open my hands and say, I don't know what you're doing here, but I
Mm-hmm.
trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the second piece is forgiving my husband.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot there with his alcoholism. He died of the consequences of
Yes.
alcohol. And
Yes.
that took the longest, I think, to forgive him. I'd say I'm finally there completely.
Wow.
Um, but it took a while. It took a lot of healing. You know, I'm a part of some groups that help with that. I can't say there's, on this podcast, but
Sure.
there's places you can go to have help if that's something that
Sure.
you're
There's
struggling with.
places to help with that.
Um, but I think something that helps with that a lot is, and this is in the book, this story. This is a little side story, but it's a funny one. My
That's good.
father years and years ago. He doesn't even remember this. When he read my draft of my book, he said, "That happened, Leah?" I said, "Yeah." And I
Wow.
remember because it really struck me. In the middle of the night, he woke up one night and he thought my mother was an intruder in the house and went after her to try to strangle her.
Oh.
Right? Now she woke up, she woke him up, and he immediately was, shocked and, oh my gosh, she wasn't hurt. Everything was fine.
Oh,
What could
good.
my mom possibly be angry at my dad for his actions? No. Scared, maybe? Unwilling to sleep next to him again? Maybe. And that's just stuck with me because I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't imagine that would happen.
Sure.
But however, he was having a dream.
He was having a bad dream.
A really bad dream. It had nothing to do with my mom. And he was doing nothing wrong. Yeah. When Jesus is on the cross, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do."
That's right.
And I think we have to realize that any human, regardless of where we are asleep. We're asleep on the lap of God, but we're asleep. We're having an experience in our bodies. Mm-hmm. But when we get to the other side, we're fully aware. Mm-hmm. And we know who we are. We know who we are in God. We know we are loved. And we don't act the same way. But here, we're stuck. We have all these distractions. We feel separated from God. We feel separated from each other. And we are, in a way, having this dream. Some people, it's a nightmare.
Yep.
And we have to understand that isn't who they are. When my husband was sick with alcoholism, that isn't who he was. And I saw that his last 4 months of life.
You did. Like you saw a different man those last 4 months.
Oh my gosh, yes. It was, and that was crazy.
That was a gift, wasn't it?
I asked for that. When he was in the hospital, when he went to the hospital, he had a collapsed lung the first time. Went to the hospital, and doctors told me he may not make it. And I got on my knees and I begged. And
yes,
I can't go into it probably because of time in this podcast, but I had I was told 9 months before he died that I was going to lose him. And it was this very mystical experience that this was going to happen. At that point, I was in denial. I didn't realize how sick he was.
You didn't.
So it was a complete
you
shock.
Weren't accepting it. Yeah.
No. So I thought at that time that's when he was going to go. And I got on my knees, and I guess that was a Hezekiah. I forget which king it was. You got and begged God in the Old Testament for more time.
And he got the extended life.
Yes, and I swear that's what happened. I said, give him a chance to come home. Give him a chance to be sober, to forgive himself, for the kids to see their dad without alcohol. Like, give us a little bit of time. And we got 3.5 months.
Wow,
together.
What a gift.
Yes, and it was so good to the boys to see their dad, not healthy physically, but healthy emotionally. And for us to have that experience and that closure, so that when he did pass, I didn't have, and he got peace with himself. He forgave himself. And that is huge.
It's almost like in your story that he woke up those last few months, that he was awake to you and the kids.
And that made
beautiful.
It easier to forgive, for sure.
Yeah, it did. It absolutely did.
Yes. And I think that last piece of forgiveness is forgiving ourselves. And that gets us
it is, isn't it? Tell us about that.
I think one of the hardest things, so my mother, my birth mother, passed when I was 2 months old. So my dad was no stranger to being a widower. And that first night after my husband passed, we were at my parents' house. My dad and mom said, we need to leave the house, get you out of this environment, because he died in the home. And they said, we just need you to just come with us. I said, yes, agreed. I don't want to be in the house right now. Okay. And went with them. And so I was with my dad that night and immediately started spinning the what ifs. What if I had taken him to the hospital a couple hours before? What if I had done this? What if I had done that? And he said, Leah, you have to stop. Yeah. I've been there. And this leads nowhere. This leads nowhere. And I had 2 experiences. First, my dad helped me to at least logically stop and try to stem that and say, nope, this is God's will. Let it go. Let it go. It's not about me. But there's actually three pieces. The first is the who I am now could have saved who he was then. I think maybe that would, but who he was then made me who I am now. That because of the journey we went through, he made me this, and it's a gift. And I think realizing I did the best I could. I was asleep too, right? And I have to forgive myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I had I've had a lot of very, I guess, mystical experiences, the best I can say. A few months after he passed, I had a very vivid dream. And in that dream, it was like replaying that day before. I took him to the hospital. and he died in agony in the hospital bed. And there was a voiceover that said, "This is what could have been." And so the
Oh,
idea of that piece of, oh my goodness, this is what he wanted, and this is the best thing that could have happened, is he got to say goodbye to his kids. He got to
and he
raise
died
them home.
peacefully at home.
Yes. So I think
Wow.
that was what he wanted. And
Hmm.
me not forcing him to go to the hospital, even though I knew he wasn't doing well,
Hmm.
maybe was God's will. And that is still so hard for me to accept. But it is, maybe I had to forgive myself for that. And the final piece is, if God's forgiven us, it's awfully prideful of us to deny that and say we know better.
It
You
is,
know?
isn't it? Because we get in an arm wrestling match with God. You've
Yes.
forgiven me, God, but I'm not going to forgive me.
Yeah. I know better. And you don't know
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
I know better.
So, yeah. So being guilty and shamed is actually a form of pride. And true humility is accepting God's forgiveness and grace on a regular basis.
Yes. There's so many pieces of this that you've talked about, but one of the small things that we don't understand, I think a lot of people don't understand, is that, and you just mentioned it, when I'm holding on to some kind of care instead of casting it on the Lord, it's actually a type of pride. And you mentioned that. First Peter chapter 5 says, humble yourselves. And what does it say right after it? Casting your care on him because he cares for you. And so we think about the little old lady that's worrying herself sick. We don't think that there's pride there, but there secretly is pride there, right? The Lord says the humble path is to own it and cast it, not
Yes.
own it and hold on to it.
Yes, absolutely. Very well
And
said.
so that's beautiful. And you started off by, okay, we have these three entities to forgive, right? We have God, who we know, however we approach sovereignty in one way or another, we know God is large and in charge. And we have to, like Job or like Jeremiah in Lamentations 3, we have to own our offense and be real about it. But then that humility comes in, and we're going to release those, we call them thoughts against God. I call them TAG, thoughts against God. You have to own it first. You have to humble yourself and then release it. We talked about forgiving yourself, but like forgiving your husband, ultimately, of course, as tragic as this was, in a sense, he drank himself to death, which is so sad. But he did, it was the man that killed my husband is the man I'm angry with, and I have to deal with forgiving him. And when we think about it, one of the ways I like to think about forgiveness is just that simple. Well, in the King James it says, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So, in a real sense, it's saying, okay, God, I know I've been the debt collector for a long time, but I'm going to put that in your hands. I'm going to let you be the debt collector.
Yeah.
So, that was such a huge part of what you went through, is working through that forgiveness. And then the what ifs, you talked about the what ifs. You can get so bogged down in the what ifs. I used to work, when I first started my career, at the Suicide and Crisis Center. And oh, the tragedy of losing someone to suicide, with the what if, what if, what if. And really, in our grieving process, that's getting stuck in the bargaining phase where you're trying to figure it out. If only I'd done this, or what if, what if, what if. And so many times, whether it's suicidal or the alcoholic or the drug addict, as tragic as it is, I tell people it's almost like they're walking on the edge of the Grand Canyon with no barrier, and almost anything could knock them in when they're rolling the dice like that, you
Mm,
know? And it's sad because you want to rescue them. You do everything that you know to do at the time, but we're not God. And so that was a lot of what you had to go through. And then as you were going through this, I'm getting the idea that so much of this was coming out in your meditation with God, coming out in your times with him. Could you tell us more about how that process happened?
Yes. So I think it's very important. And the very first day I was driving to my parents' house, well, I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat, sandwiched between my two kids. I had the middle
Sure.
seat. So I had one kid either side, and I was squashed in the middle. So not only was I physically uncomfortable,
Sure.
but my parents are trying to make light of everything and cheer the kids up and be,
Yeah.
and I'm not there. And it's the only time I faked strength. And I
Okay.
regret that because
Okay.
I know that that was not healthy. When
Okay.
we think about energy or stream, think about a water in a stream. If you put a rock against in the water, it's going to spiral back and form a. And when we push down, we say, I don't want to let this out. I'm not going to let this emotion out. We're causing a knot to form inside us. And that is so much harder and more painful to deal with than just letting the water flow.
Yes.
So after that first afternoon, I didn't stop it anymore. I let the
Wow.
tears flow whenever they needed to. And
Wow.
I wasn't sobbing. I did have some ugly cries when the kids went to
Hmm.
bed. I would just let it out and just
Sure.
do the ugly cries with the tissues. Um, but just letting that emotion flow through. And I knew enough about meditation to get to that place where I could sit with it and observe what it felt like in the body. So I would say, okay, where am I feeling grief? What does it feel like in my heart, in my body,
That's
in my
good.
mind? And just observe it, not judge it, not try
Hmm.
to change it. Just notice it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wonder what it feels like to be sad. Wonder what
Just
it
like
feels like.
acknowledge it,
Yeah.
validate it.
Almost like I'm looking at, because I had to do this too, sit with my children in their grief and just
Uh
observe,
huh.
not try to change it,
Uh huh.
not try to do anything to it except for just be with it
Hmm.
and just watch it. Now, after that watching, I would look at any thought patterns that were detrimental. So if
Okay.
the what ifs came up,
Anything negative?
yes, or just doubts against God or the what ifs start coming, anything like that, I just put in some affirmations. God is
Hmm.
holding me, all is
Hmm.
well. Whatever I needed to say, and that's that cognitive behavioral therapy. Is I didn't know what that was
Yeah,
until
it's taking the
six
thoughts
months.
captive, right?
I didn't know
Yeah.
what it was called from the counseling sense till 6 months in.
Sure.
Um, and I was like, oh, that's what I've been doing all along.
Sure.
But
God
that is
taught it to
when,
you.
yes, God taught it to me. It's biblical.
It's very biblical.
So just sitting with it, affirming God's truth, even 15 months after he passed, it came back. I had a moment where I was with his childhood slash high school slash adult friends. They've been his friends his whole life, and they were also family friends. They invited us to a Christmas party, and I was witnessing the grief of his friends. And they weren't, they didn't seem to be doing very well.
Okay.
And it was so hard to see them in pain. And I came home, and that night there was a Christmas concert we were watching on the TV. I forget which artist it was, and the
Hmm.
song that they started playing was about the Christmases, the people we've lost, and celebrating without them. And this combination was not helpful. So the kids went to bed, and I had one of those ugly cry sessions and just let
An
it
ugly
out,
cry.
right? Because I
Yes.
knew no point bottling this up. Just let it come through, and
Hmm.
let hold that inner child. Imagine
Hmm.
Jesus putting his arms around you and just letting that be. So yeah, when we do that, I actually got to the point where I didn't suffer from it anymore. That when I felt
Wow.
the grief, it was just like letting water rush through me
It's
and up and out,
beautiful.
and it wasn't suffering. Pain maybe in the body, crying doesn't feel great, but it
Hmm.
almost felt good. It felt like a release of energy. So
Well,
yeah,
and you think about it, Leah. I mean, scripturally, we, when you went to that pain, the Lord always met you in
yes,
that weakness and pain with more grace than you need.
absolutely, yes,
Right? And so, the Bible says where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. But it also says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. And in Revelation 3, we see him inviting the people of Laodicea to go into that place of pain. And he says, behold, I knock on that door. I'm knocking on the door. All you have to do is just give him permission to come and join you in that pain, in that place of need. And that sounds like what you just started doing over and over and over.
yes. And like you said, it's the listening piece. It's not I wasn't aware of what I was doing. It's just that
Yes.
goes beyond words. It's kind of because I had sat with God for so long that I knew like when a kid gets beat up, they fall off their bike, they know what to do. They don't have to think about it. They run to mom or dad and they cry and they reach up and help,
That's right.
I just knew I was trained. I knew what to do. I knew where my hope was. And I just ran to that, and God never fails. I think, not thinking we have to do it on our own. I know you had a podcast about community, and I had people wrapping their arms around me too, and have a whole chapter in the book about the community that was there.
Oh,
And
that's
that is
so
absolutely
good.
true. But I know you had a whole podcast on that. But also,
That's
God,
so good. Tell us a key part of that community for you, Leah.
uh, so my dad was huge
Okay.
because he had been through it, and he stayed with me that second night. The first night I was at his house in the basement. Oh, that was a tough night. The
Wow.
second night he spent with me in my house.
Wow.
And that was a little bit better. And then he went home. At that point, I was through the worst, honestly. It didn't take me too
Okay.
long to get past the worst.
Uh-huh.
That
Uh-huh.
second day, or no, the day after he passed, I went right up to a friend. She's older, in their 60s, 70s, probably
Mm-hmm.
70s now.
Mm-hmm.
And she had lost her husband maybe, and when she was about 40. So she had
Oh,
walked this
wow.
path, and she had me up
Okay.
for this delicious zucchini bread. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And great conversation.
Memorable.
Yes, I remember the zucchini bread more than anything. But that conversation and just that understanding of, hey, someone walked this path before me and it all went fine. She's this beautiful place now with her husband of now like 20 years and everything and how it worked out. And she just gave me that hope.
Oh,
And
that's so good.
so that was good. And, I could cry, I could vent, but we focused more on the hope. We were Christian. We're both writers, so we had that in common. There was so much there that just surrounded me with what I needed. And then, honestly, my boys.
Oh, yes, your two boys.
They were 7 and 10 at the time. So there's very tender, but there was also those just sharing memories of dad together, talking about dad, laughing about,
Oh,
and just processing that as a family and not being afraid to talk about dad. We talked about dad every day,
that's
and we talked
so
about
good.
what dad would
That's
do
so
here,
good.
and
Whenever you want to, we'll talk about dad.
when my now husband came into the picture, one of the first conversations we had is I said, Brett, my first husband, will be talked about in this house. Like that is,
Yes.
there's going to be pictures in the house of him, not in
Yes.
our bedroom, not in the main space,
Sure.
but in their bedrooms, in their hallway where their bedrooms are. There's pictures of daddy. And I said, he's going to be a part of our family. They're going to celebrate their dad. He will
Mm-hmm.
always be, and he embraced that. I love the
That's
man for
so
that.
good.
And he asked about, what did especially that first year, did your dad and you used to do this together? And what did your
Oh,
dad do with this? And just bring back and celebrate and honor that. And that was so important to, to the idea of talking about the positive, the joys, right? To
yes.
celebrate. So there's some cool things that we did. One of them, this is my cousin. That first day, we were sitting together by the pool watching the kids play. This is the way my husband passes. They go over to the neighbors. The kids go to the neighbors to play. I mean, they're like screaming, and then they like, okay, go to the neighbors. We're gonna play while everything is
Sure.
going down with the all the stuff that what happens after someone
Mm-hmm.
passes. And then we go to my parents' house, and my cousin lives next door, and she has kids, and they're just playing in the pool all day. And my cousin and I are talking, and she says, "Did you ever think of making a memory quilt? I take all the things
Oh,
and make a quilt of the pieces of clothing that have emotional value." And so not only did we have one, we had three. My neighbor's daughter
oh,
made gave us as a Christmas gift, made these three beautiful quilts, one for
wow.
each of us, with like dad's shirts, sweatshirts, flannel pants, and I call them the daddy blankets. And
Oh,
you
the
cry
daddy
thinking about it. It was
blankets.
so beautiful. And the kids, like when they had a bad day, they just curl up in their daddy blanket. So
Oh,
that was just a beautiful way to celebrate him. And then I saved this. This is day two. Before I went
okay.
to the friend's house with this zucchini bread, my dad and I went through all of Brett's stuff. The closet. I just went through three piles: trash,
Uh-huh.
quilt,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and save for the boys. And so the
Sure.
boys are old enough now. My oldest is 14 now and is wearing adult clothes, and he's now wearing some of his dad's old clothes.
Oh.
So we have his suits, his Orioles jerseys, all the things that, and they wear those things, and they have that piece of their dad. And so honoring that and celebrating the music dad listened to, we listened to in the car. I think all those little things, but then also, Mark, I think it's important to acknowledge the things that are going to change,
Sure.
because I think sometimes it's scary to move on
It
and to do
is.
things different than what
Hmm.
dad did not want a dog. And this is he's a comedian as well, my late husband, but he said,
Oh, okay.
I asked him, what kind of dog would you have if you had a dog? He said, well, I'd want a dog with stage 4 cancer. I would love it very, very well for the 2 weeks it was alive, and then it would be done. So, needless to say, we have a dog now
You have
because
a dog now.
the three of us really wanted a dog, the boys and I. And so, a year after Daddy passed, we got a dog.
That's
Little things like that.
wonderful.
It's okay to do something different. It's okay to, yeah, Daddy wouldn't have wanted that, but we're doing us now, and that's okay. So,
That's so good, Leah. That is so good. You mentioned hope and kind of restoring hope. And I think you said something about a friend also with that. But I know years ago, I was meditating on what's the definition of hope. And as I kind of sat there, I was thinking about, I know hope is about the goodness of God. I know it is. But it kind of settled into my spirit that hope is the expectation of good from the hand and the heart of God.
ooh, that's good.
It's the expectation of good from the hand and the heart of God. It's not connected to the deepest hope, the most profound hope is not about my circumstances. It's
Yes.
not even about losses that could be tragic that I have to grieve. I have to go through the process, like you're saying. It's deeper than that. It's beyond that. And I think that I can have hope if I will allow it. I can have that hope, that expectation that God has favor for me. He has love for me. Yes, even abundance, because he said, the thief comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that you might have life and life abundant.
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
us about living in joy.
Absolutely. So there were so many things, and even starting with that first day, within a few minutes of his passing, I made a point. I don't know what. Again, must be training from that time with him, the time
Yes,
with God. I mean, because my immediate thing was look for the joy, look for the
look for
joy,
the joy.
and in that first day, even my son, my oldest son, said to me within a year or two afterwards, he said, that was the worst day of my life and one of the best days of my life at the same time. And I agree with him. I would not have a problem reliving that day. And that's saying something because there was some intense pain I wouldn't want to experience. But the way, I mean, first of all, my in laws, my late husband's parents, they never once played the what if game with me.
Wow.
They never asked me, well, I mean, can you imagine getting that phone call?
Oh my.
They never said, well, why? Or why didn't you? That never came up. And I respect and honor them, and I always will for that. They are good people.
Oh, it's
Um,
beautiful.
it really is. And get all choked up about that because this is what gets me. I cry when I'm happy. My current husband is getting used to that. He's like, okay, you're happy. It's like, yeah, I only cry when I'm happy.
Yes.
But I'm just
Yes.
overcome with just gratitude. And so realizing that in the moment and saying thank you. My parents rushing down, my neighbors taking the kids on while getting them out of the
Oh
house, out of the
yes.
situation, and playing with them. My cousin with a memory blanket idea and just holding me emotionally. My friend the next day. So many of those moments of just that care and compassion that I felt. And just those little tiny things, whether it's the taste of a milkshake or, whatever, the song of birds, anything I could say, this is good right now. In this present moment, it's good. And it doesn't mean that I'm not in my mind. I can't, that first car ride home thinking something good would happen. And the hard part about this is I notice the joy and say, oh, I should tell Brett that. And
Oh
then say, I
yes.
can't. Then I say, okay, I
Mm.
can. I'm going to share it with you through my heart because you're
Yeah,
there. I know you're there. And I just try to do
it's
it that
good.
way. But it's a knife to the heart every time with those moments. But the joy is there. And it became an everyday process of just looking for those little joys. Um,
I
and that
love that phrase, Leah. Look for the joy. Look for the joy. And it doesn't preclude us from embracing those painful things, right?
correct.
It doesn't, because we still have to embrace the painful things. Jesus was a man of sorrows intimately acquainted with grief. And the Bible talks about filling up what's left of Christ's sorrows, filling up what's left. We will have to grieve things, but to look for the joy is, I mean, that's hopeful in itself. I love that. Wow, this is a wonderful testimony that you've given us. What would you, is there anything kind of to pull it all together or to wrap things up? What would you share with us and all the listeners, just from your heart, where you are now, or kind of, we talked a lot about that first year or so. How would you pull things together, Leah? I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to share anything you want.
Whew, that is a hard one. I feel like I did cover a whole lot of things. I want to briefly, for 1 minute, just touch on the trauma piece because I don't want to
Okay.
ignore it. I said meditation was my key out, but at the same time, my husband died because he couldn't breathe.
Oh,
So
wow.
anything with the sound of breath was actually traumatizing. And what do you do when you
Yes.
meditate? You focus on the breath. So
Yes.
if you're experiencing trauma, I just want to acknowledge that. And
Mm.
I think the best way is to bring attention to it, notice what's going on
Hmm.
in the body,
Hmm.
and then gradually, very slowly and gently shift to the positive. Very
It's good.
slowly, be very gentle with yourself. So if every time I heard
Hmm.
an ambulance go past, that was traumatic.
Okay.
But I would say
Sure.
that ambulance is going to help someone. Chances are that person's going to be fine. My
Sure.
husband's circumstance was a unique one. Like this is, thank you, God, for those healthcare workers. Move on. And then now I don't think anything of it when I hear ambulance. Or when I breathe, just say, this is the breath of life. God's breathing in me. It's okay. And just gradually get back to where. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then my ultimate belief and way of life is, like you said about the hope, Mark,
Hmm.
expecting good from the hand of God,
Yes.
surrendering to that. When
Yes.
the problem when we suffer is that we are trying to control life, control the outcome, or resist something that's happening.
Mhm.
If we stop trying to resist it, if we
Yes.
stop trying to grasp and control, suffering's gone. It just passes. It's not there. So if
I
we just,
call it the illusion of control, right?
yes, we
We
don't have
try
it.
to hold on to this. It's just an illusion. We can't really control it.
Yes, exactly. So if we just fall into that place of surrender and trust, God has better plans for you than you can possibly imagine. And I can say without a doubt, like where this whole journey led me, even that first year after he passed was the best year of my life to date. And then
Wow.
every year after that just gotten better and better.
Wow. There's a Bible verse, and I think it's so appropriate here. Let's go to that. It's a short psalm. So let's go take a look at Psalm 126, and it fits with your grieving, your tears, and your joy. It says, um, here in verse 5, Psalm 126, verse 5, those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him.
Amen.
And I see that in your countenance and in your testimony. You were able to sow those tears of joy, excuse me, those tears, those seeds of tears, and reap a harvest of joy. And
Yes.
that's beautiful to hear about. And it's beautiful to see because we can see it in your countenance. We can hear it in your words.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I love bringing scripture to it because that is the living word of God that does show you, it shows you that path of trust me. I've got you. I'm holding you. And yeah, God is trustworthy.
That's right. And when you think about meditation, God calls himself in scripture, he is the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our sorrows. And to me, as you tell this beautiful story of meditating, of coming to the Lord day after day with everything you had, and there was just this consistent and gradual depth of God comforting you at every turn. And it's such an invitation for us to follow your lead. And I just so appreciate you sharing this story with us, Leah.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to share it. I hope it is. I mean, I think there it is, right? So many of us grieve. We all grieve at some point in our life. Don't buy
Yes.
into the lie that you're just here to survive it. God
No.
is using this as an invitation to bring you closer to Him and
Hmm.
give you that perfect joy. You know, Jesus says at the Last Supper, you're going to cry now. You're going to have that, but then there will be a time when no one can take away your joy. You have to walk through that to get there. And losing my husband,
Yes.
and I wish it didn't have to happen that way, but
Yes.
was the greatest gift that I ever received because it brought me into God's arms the way that it did.
It's amazing. Weeping may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Yes.
Leah, thank you so much for being on our Soul Sense podcast. How can people reach you? How can people access your books and follow you on YouTube? Tell us how to connect with you.
So I would point everybody to my blog. That's the best place because it's got the
Okay.
central hub where you can get to everything else. And it's easy to remember. It's
Okay.
thecontemplativechristian.com. Thecontemplativechristian.com. And on this,
Thecontemplativechristian.com. I love it.
so we've got the two book links on there. Obviously, the blog's there. My YouTube channel is linked, as well as my Substack, where I do regular writing, and Twitter and Instagram. Although I'm not a big fan of Twitter and Instagram, I do use
Sure.
them
Sure.
because it's out
Hey,
there. I guess I should.
it's out there. Thank you so much for being on here, on with us. God bless your marriage, your children, and this next book project. Maybe we'll do another podcast when it comes out.
Love to. Thank you again.
Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share with others who might need it. And you can find additional resources at SamaritansWell.com.